8 weeks, everybody. 8 weeks. 2 months away from college football starting off. So the previews are coming up to the end. Well, we only got 2 previews left. One official preview and then the OU preview. This last preview comes down to the only true freshman to come into Oklahoma and win the Bedlam rivalry in Norman. From the Oklahoma State standpoint, that'll be Mason Rudolph. Remember, my close personal friend, also Pole Guy, started the OSU game in 2001, being injured. Josh Fields came off the bench as a true freshman and won the game. But also got the start. Preview of the OSU game. Football team coming up next. Only right here, Boomer Sooner 1982. Don't move. Since I moved back in 2008, my first official home game for Bedlam, of course, I started going to the games in 2009, so 2010 was my first official game back. Of course, that was the Ryan Broyles play, and even that game was kind of a close one. But after that, we played 2 extras, overtimes, that is. One going each way. Of course, Brennan Clay scoring the touchdown in the first ever overtime game. And then 2 years later, 2 years ago, of course, we all remember the repunt, the re-kick that Bob accepted the penalty. Bob declined the penalty, said, "Hey, just repunt the ball." And Tyreek Hill runs in the punt return for a touchdown, ties up the ball game. OSU ends up winning it in overtime. But remember all those close games we had that year? Well, OSU had all the close games this year. But in fact, even with all those close games, didn't look too bad last year for 2015, finishing with another 10-win season under Mike Gundy. 10-3 for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. 7-2 in league play. They did tie with TCU at the 7-2 record, right behind Oklahoma in first place and Big 12 champion. But with all those close games, the one at Texas comes to mind. The having the ball go over the punter's head. Remember that one. The TCU blowout. The West Virginia win. But what everybody's going to remember are the losses. To us, for the Big 12 championship, they lost to Ole Miss from the SEC in their bowl version, in the Sugar Bowl. And then, of course, the third one. And get this, and I understand that Sinham was injured, and so they had to play with a third-string quarterback the rest of the way. But remember this one, too. In the blowout, another blowout, by the way, it was a blowout by the Baylor Bears, who, after falling to Oklahoma, has had a tough road. They've lost to us. They've lost They did beat OSU. They then lost to TCU, and they lost their bowl game. And now they've lost their coach. They've lost their quarterback, Stidham, that we just talked about. They're losing it all. It's going crazy down there in Waco. But what about Oklahoma State? Like I said, 10-3, not too bad. Baylor, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss. A couple of teams that finished pretty strong, except for the Baylor thing, and that's because of the quarterback issue. Can't blame them on that. The aforementioned Ole Miss Rebels was the opponent in the Sugar Bowl for Oklahoma State. Ole Miss finished in second place in the SEC Western Division at 10-3, 6-2. But they were pretty good there in that bowl game. 48-20 was the loss. Their head coach is one of their own, Mike Gundy. In his 12th season at Oklahoma State, went out there in 2005. Stats from last year look pretty solid, as they do always up the road in Stillwater, including that guy that we were just talking about in the preview, in the previous segment, that true freshman quarterback. Well, he's now a junior, and he's looking pretty good. Number 2, Mason Rudolph. He is a quarterback. He's passed last year for 3,770 yards, 21 touches, and 9 interceptions, injured, by the way, late in the season. Rushing the ball, number 32, Chris Carson, had 131 carries for 517 yards and 4 touches last year for Oklahoma State. Their other returning leading rusher wasn't even on the team last year. In fact, this particular gentleman, Barry Sanders Jr., had 51 carries, 315 yards, and 4 touches as a Stanford Cardinal last year. Of course, he transfers to Oklahoma State from Stanford because of Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey's a Heisman candidate. Sanders Jr. will get a free graduate transfer, meaning that once in 2 months, once he's on campus, he's eligible to play right away. I put up those numbers at Stanford. Comes in to Oklahoma. Last time he was here, he won he was the state player of the year at running back. Of course, a receiver that year, Sterling Shepard. Just saying, another pretty good looking receiver. Speaking of receiver, what about receivers? Number 28, James Washington returns, as does number 3, Marcel Aikman. Now, 28, James Washington had 53 receptions last year for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Well, he got 1,000 yards, passed 1,000 yards, with 1,087 yards and 10 touchdowns for last year for the Cowboys. Well, Marcel Aikman had 45 receptions, 776 yards, and 5 touches last year as a Cowboy. Now, like we talked about, 10-3. Luckily, they didn't have like Oklahoma had, with losing all those close games. OSU won all those close games. But Oklahoma, of course, had those close games that I'm talking about. Had those 2 years ago at TCU, at Kansas State, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and then Clemson. A couple of those weren't so close. The one against Oklahoma State, the one against Kansas State, and TCU were the close ones. But to get those close wins, they have to have a pretty solid defense. Oklahoma State does have a pretty solid defense returning, including number 13, Jordan Stearns, and number 20, Jordan Burton. Now, number 13, Jordan Stearns, had 108 tackles last year for Oklahoma State, forcing a fumble, didn't recover any fumbles, but did have an interception at the defensive back slot as a Cowboy. Second leading returning tackler last year was a linebacker with the name of number 20, Jordan Burton. Now, Burton had 98 tackles last year, had a forced fumble, didn't recover any fumbles, and he also had 1 interception last year from the linebacker slot. Their head coach is Mike Gundy. Of course, the Gundy there, part of that 80s rush with the original Sanders, Barry Sanders Sr., Thurman Thomas. He was their main guy. He was their quarterback at Oklahoma State. Returned home to his alma mater as head coach in 2005 and has been there ever since. Their overall record, coaching staff record for Mike Gundy, 94-47. That is a .667 winning percentage for Oklahoma State. Post-bowl record, 6-4 postseason bowl record. 6.00 is the winning percentage on that. And then, of course, conference or divisional titles in the Stoops era. They lost out on the one last year. They do, however, have one conference title. They have it after humiliating Oklahoma in 2011. The year that, by the way, we didn't have Ryan Broyles. All our guys were injured. That year, Oklahoma State took dramatic advantage for their first and only Big 12 championship. By the way, in that year, of course, since they lost to Iowa State in the preview, in the regular season, they accepted a BCS invite to play in the Fiesta Bowl against Stanford. Where, by the way, again, if you didn't hear, speaking of Stanford, Barry Sanders Jr. comes over from Stanford. He will be eligible once in 2 months, once that first weekend is played for Oklahoma State. He will be eligible. So, with that being said, thanks for watching, everybody. The Oklahoma Sooner preview coming up next weekend. And maybe even get some more previews coming up. I know the basketball season's out for Oklahoma, at least. So we'll preview that also here in the next few months. Heading in to college football. Once again, my name's Harry James. This has been the Oklahoma State Cowboy Preview Show. Again, one final time. Last year, the Oklahoma State Cowboys finished with a 10-3 overall record. 7-2 in league play. And that does, the 10-3, how they got their third loss, it was in their bowl game to Ole Miss, 40-28. But 10-win team, still pretty solid team, coming back to Norman this year. We'll find out what happens on senior night here in a few months. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, Boomer Sooner. Take care, everybody. I'm out of here.